The Labour government is grappling with a major crisis as Chancellor Rachel Reeves's aggressive tax increases send shockwaves through the economy, triggering widespread outrage among businesses, job losses, and even dissent within her own party. The backlash against Labour's stance on taxation has reached a breaking point, with at least a dozen MPs defecting to Reform UK in protest over Reeves's policies. Critics argue that her economic strategy is pushing the country into turmoil at a time when financial stability is crucial for addressing international threats like Vladimir Putin. As global tensions rise and Prime Minister Keir Starmer commits to increased military spending, many believe Reeves's tax policies are crippling the economy needed to sustain such ambitions. At the core of the controversy is her decision to implement a massive £25 billion tax hike on UK businesses. The most damaging of these measures is the significant rise in employers' national insurance (NI) contributions, a move analysts warn could result in the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs and push numerous businesses to the brink of collapse. Experts estimate that these hikes could lead to 300,000 job losses, severely impacting both workers and government tax revenues. The hospitality sector is among the hardest hit, with PPH Hotel Group, which manages a £2.2 billion portfolio across the UK and Europe, announcing plans to shift investment to Spain and Italy due to Reeves's perceived hostility toward enterprise. County Chief Executive Greg Hay has openly criticised Labour's economic stance, describing the UK as increasingly unattractive for investment. As economic turmoil deepens, Labour MPs themselves are turning against Reeves's policies. In a dramatic political shift, at least 12 MPs have defected to Reform UK, accusing the party of betraying British workers and businesses. These defections highlight growing discontent within Labour, with many backbenchers fearing that Reeves's policies will alienate both working-class and pro-business voters. The rapid rise of Reform UK poses a significant challenge to Labour's dominance, as former party members denounce Starmer and Reeves for driving the country into economic decline. UK businesses are now shedding jobs at the fastest rate in over 4 years, with the knee hikes described as an economic wrecking ball. Leading business groups, including the Institute of Directors and the British Chambers of Commerce, warn that the increasing tax burden on employers is unsustainable. Critics argue that Reeves is not only harming businesses but also inflating government spending on unemployment benefits, as a rising number of job seekers turn to job centres across the country, adding to the economic strain. Reeves has been accused of exacerbating the UK's financial woes by significantly increasing government borrowing. Reports indicate she has already borrowed nearly £13 billion more than anticipated, raising fears of further tax hikes in her upcoming spring statement on March 26. Analysts caution that rather than stimulating economic growth, Labour's tax and spend approach is pushing the UK toward recession. The mounting national debt has sparked concerns that even harsher tax measures could follow, further damaging business confidence and discouraging investment. Labour's economic mismanagement follows years of fiscal irresponsibility. While the previous Conservative government was criticised for wasting billions on failed projects like HS2 and COVID contracts, Labour is now proving equally reckless by imposing new tax burdens without effective public spending control. Despite Starmer's promises of increased military funding, critics argue that his numbers do not add up. Observers warn that Putin will see through Labour's economic instability, recognising that a struggling UK economy is in no position to strengthen its military capabilities meaningfully. Labour's tax policies are also impacting the real estate sector, with property developers warning that rising corporate taxes will stifle housing investment. Many industry leaders argue that increased business costs will translate into lower wages, reduced hiring, and a slowdown in housing development, exacerbating the ongoing housing crisis. The Bank of England has also raised concerns that increased taxation, combined with high inflation, could suppress consumer spending and stall economic recovery further. Meanwhile, small business owners across the UK are expressing outrage over the escalating costs imposed by Reeves's tax policies. Many claim these additional expenses will force them to raise prices, reducing consumer demand and making it harder to compete with international businesses. Some entrepreneurs warn that Reeves's approach is making the UK one of the least attractive places for startups and investment, ultimately driving talent and capital abroad. Middle-class families are also feeling the squeeze from Reeves's tax increases. Many argue that the Chancellor's policies unfairly target hard-working Britons who are already struggling with high energy bills, mortgage payments, and the cost of living crisis. Financial experts warn that further tax hikes will leave households with even less disposable income, deepening economic stagnation and leading to long-term financial insecurity for millions. Public confidence in Reeves's handling of the economy is plummeting, with polls indicating a significant decline in support for Labour. Many former Labour voters are now voicing frustration, with Reform UK's growing popularity reflecting broader dissatisfaction with the government's economic policies. Political analysts warn that unless Labour changes course, the party could suffer substantial losses in upcoming elections, with traditional strongholds shifting their support elsewhere. With tax hikes wreaking havoc on businesses, Labour MPs defecting, and Reform UK gaining momentum, Labour's grip on power is looking increasingly unstable. The party's economic policies have alienated businesses, workers, and even its own members, raising serious doubts about its ability to govern effectively. Unless drastic changes are made, Reeves's tenure as Chancellor may be remembered as one of the most disastrous in modern history. As Labour scrambles to contain the fallout, one thing is clear. Rachel Reeves's tax policies have thrown her party into deep turmoil, with potentially devastating consequences for the UK economy. In the midst of this financial turbulence, the Home Office has come under fire for its handling of immigration enforcement. The UK and France recently announced a new initiative to crack down on smuggling gangs, but critics argue it is merely a rebranded version of previous policies. A press release detailing the agreement between Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and her French counterpart Bruno Rello emphasised new law enforcement actions, yet much of the funding comes from existing resources under the 2018 Sandhurst Agreement. While UK-France relations appear to have improved since Boris Johnson's tenure, little progress has been made in resolving the migrant crisis. The latest initiative reallocates £7 million to enhance beach patrols, expand drone surveillance, and increase intelligence operations targeting smuggling networks. However, similar measures were previously agreed upon by former Home Secretary James Cleverly and then French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin, with little impact on reducing small boat crossings. The Home Office's approach has been widely criticised as ineffective, raising questions about the government's ability to address the crisis effectively. Meanwhile, the public grows increasingly frustrated with both Labour's economic mismanagement and its inability to tackle pressing national issues. With businesses struggling, job losses mounting, and voter dissatisfaction rising, Labour faces an uphill battle to regain public trust. Unless swift and meaningful policy shifts are enacted, the party's future electoral prospects could be in serious jeopardy.